The Ross Sea, summed up in 5 minutes. The Ross Sea, named after its discoverer, James Ross, located in Antarctica, is one of the most pristine, untouched natural environments in the world, but also a controversial matter. Some people want to keep the Ross Sea untouched and let the animals in its ecosystem stay balanced, while others want to use its resources for themselves to profit from. Well, to figure out everyone's perspectives, we'll have to go back to what happened. The 1st of December, 1959, is when the Antarctic Treaty was first signed. This treaty was formed by many countries of the world to set aside the Antarctic for scientific research and conservation, to protect it, to say that it had no ruler and bans all military activity off of the continent. But there was one flaw in this treaty. They simply did not include the oceans around Antarctica, and the nations began to exploit its resources. An example of one of these places is the Ross Sea. It is home to vitally important amounts of the world's Weddell, crab-eater, and leopard seals, Adelaide penguins, emperor penguins, Antarctic petrels, and type C killer whales. Over 1,000 species of animals live here, making it a marine hotspot in biodiversity. But there were some animals that had gained huge amounts of popularity and were heavily commercially and illegally fished. The first one was krill, which began to be fished in the 1960s. It was popular because it was processed into animal feed and made into omega-3 supplements. But the important thing about krill was that it formed the base of the entire Antarctica food chain, eaten by seals, whales, penguins, and squid. If these crustaceans were overfished, seals and other predators put at risk of starvation and worse. Something had to be done. Then CAMLR was formed. The Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources was established in 1982. It was made up of 24 nations and the European Union, and was bent on conserving the marine wildlife in and around Antarctica. This was in response of the rising commercial industries. They began to sort out regulations and such for the krill, but while they were dealing with the krill overfishing, another fishing frenzy began. This time, the toothfish. The toothfish is found in waters as deep as 3 kilometers. They weigh more than 100 kgs and are up to 1.7 meters in length, so they are really big fish. Like the krill, this was another main food source for predators and was threatened due to overfishing. This fish got its popularity from its size and price, selling at around $30 a kg, making about $3,000 per fish. But why did these fish cost so much for 1 kg? Most fish have a swim bladder that helps them control their buoyancy. The toothfish has lipids, or fats, that do the same thing, but also give it a nice taste and a delicious texture, and also make it harder to spoil. However, before anyone knew this, most considered the toothfish to be junk and bycatch. But in 1977, one man named Lee Lance bought a few kgs of toothfish meat and found that it had a mild and pleasing texture from the fats. He gave the fish a trade name because its old one sounded unpleasant to eat, the toothfish. It didn't sound nice. He called it the Chilean Sea Bass, even though it's not from Chile and it's not related to the bass at all. He began importing it into the US, and within a decade, it had become exceptionally popular, and by 1997, around 100,000 tons were being harvested annually. Both of these vulnerable marine animals were decreasing in population, and were a controversial topic and a subject of debate, with illegal fishing increasing between 2004 and 2005. And at this point, CAMLR knew that they had to try a different approach, so they made the first marine protected area in the South Orkney Islands. It was a decent start, but they still had a long way to go, so in 2011 they committed to making a network of large marine protected areas. It went on about 5 years with no such luck, but in November 2016, one of the biggest marine protected areas in the world was made, with more than 1.55 million square kilometers becoming a no-fishing zone. It provides protection for fish, seals, krill, and penguins. Starting off as a joint proposal between New Zealand and the US, the decision was then taken to and approved by CAMLR and all of its members. The area under protection is roughly the same size as New Zealand and South Africa combined, and will include research zones covering 28% of its area, while the rest will be strictly no-take. Several vital foraging areas and habitats will also be part of the protected area. And who knows, maybe similar treaties can be made for other hotspots of marine biodiversity around the world.